welcome to the Elim Digital Debates, and this session is all about artificial intelligence. Now, whoever you are, whatever your understanding is of artificial intelligence, hopefully this session will inspire, encourage, but also get you to think about some of the biggest challenges and biggest questions of our time as we embrace the use of artificial intelligence throughout society and in our churches and in our walk with Jesus. So what is the definition of artificial intelligence? Well, let's have a look at this together. AI allows a computer to act and respond almost as if it was a human. Computers can be fed huge amounts of information and trained to identify the patterns in it in order to make predictions, solve problems, and even learn from their own mistakes. So what does that mean in a nutshell? Well, artificial intelligence can behave like a human. That's quite a big understanding there, isn't it? But artificial intelligence can behave like a human in the way it interacts. Now, if we've seen in recent news stories in recent days and weeks and months, artificial intelligence has hit the headlines in quite a big way. There's been quite a big worry about artificial intelligence, that it could wipe out humanity. It could change everything. We've got some big concerns all about artificial intelligence. That's what the headlines are painting the picture of. And indeed, recently there's been some Hollywood strikes where actors in Hollywood have been striking that artificial intelligence could replace themselves on screen, digital representations of themselves on screen, and screenwriters will be replaced by robots. Now, there's a lot of headlines, aren't there? There's a lot of scary news articles out there. Now, should we believe that to be true? Should we be worried about artificial intelligence? Should we be concerned about artificial intelligence? Well, that's what we're going to be exploring in this session together. Now, I don't know what your understanding of artificial intelligence is, but it's not just ChatGPT, which launched last year and hit the headlines in quite a big way. But there's a whole range of different AI tools out there that can do a lot of different things using the technology of artificial intelligence. You can create images, you can create music, you can do lots of manipulation, content creation using artificial intelligence and the technology that underpins it all. Now, of all the AI tools that are out there, ChatGPT is probably more one of the familiar ones. It launched last year, and a lot of people across the country, across the world have tried it out to see how powerful AI can be and how that data, how that technology behind AI can be used in lots of everyday applications. Now, if you don't know ChatGPT, we're going to have a look now about some of the ways we can engage with it to help us and to help us present some answers, to help us present some solutions that we may encounter as Christians or indeed as churches. So let's go, let's watch this. So we can ask ChatGPT, who is Jesus? And it will provide us with a really great answer about who is Jesus, providing biblical understanding, really easy to read. And for a non-Christian who doesn't know who Jesus is, this articulates it, well, pretty well. Now, someone might have a conundrum about how do they grow in prayer. Well, ChatGPT can help that too. Here we type it into ChatGPT and it provides to us a pretty good response, providing a list of ways we can grow in prayer. Now, ChatGPT can help people's conundrums and difficulties in people's lives. Indeed, if someone's given up on prayer, perhaps they're struggling in prayer, well, ChatGPT can help that too. Check out this. Now, ChatGPT can help churches too with decisions, with strategy. Indeed, if a church wanted to engage with their local community, well, ChatGPT can provide lots of solutions about creative ways how, as a local church, we can reach out to the community. Check out this. If someone wants to know how to read the Bible, where do they begin in reading the Bible? Well, ChatGPT has answers for that too. It provides quite a comprehensive, quite helpful response to help someone in understanding where to navigate the Bible. Now, ChatGPT can help in the use of marketing tools and marketing understanding. If a church wants to write social media captions to advertise their church service the next day, well, they don't have to figure that all out by themselves. They can ask ChatGPT, as shown on screen now. And quite boldly, you could even ask ChatGPT to write a sermon. A pastor could go to ChatGPT to ask a sermon, and it will provide a really good sermon outline. And you can ask it further questions to really frame how you wish the sermon to be written and to come across to an audience. So, wow, pretty amazing, hey? The power of ChatGPT. And if you've never explored ChatGPT yourself, why not Google it? Why not head to the website and just put in some commands and prompts in and see what comes back? Ultimately, what are we saying here? Well, ChatGPT is pretty powerful. It knows a lot of stuff using big data, using lots of information that's been fed into it. But, of course, there are other AI tools out there. Check out this AI tool for creating music, just by using an artificial intelligence tool.
So someone told me about this AI music generator. So I'm going to put it to the test. Let's type in the type of song we want. Let's say energetic house music with a funky bass line. Oh, press enter. Okay. Okay.
That's the vibe that I like.
What? No way. No way.
Ooh.
What? The vocal samples? Nah, this AI is too much. This is crazy.
That's the vibe that I like. That's the vibe.
No. That's too much.
You can also create images and use artificial intelligence for image creation and manipulation. Check out this.
Here are the top 3 AI image generators of 2022. DALL-E 2 has increased the popularity of AI imagery. You can generate, expand, and replace elements of pictures from a text prompt. Get 50 free credits to start and 15 every following month. Runway ML is a perfect tool for anyone who wants AI images and videos. You can create and edit AI images and even generate smooth transitions between them. Start for free. ArtBreeder allows you to create images and mix them together. You can also alter facial traits including age, gender, and color.
There are tools already out there that we use that now integrate and embed artificial intelligence into their use. One of them is Photoshop. Check out this video about how we can use artificial intelligence in our use of Photoshop in image manipulation. Wow, pretty mind-blowing, hey? And here are some other examples about artificial intelligence and about how they can be used through the tools that are easily out there at our fingertips.
I'm an AI avatar and I've asked an AI to make a phone call for me.
So how can I help you?
Hi, I'm calling to book a women's haircut for a client. I'm looking for something on May 3rd.
Sure, give me 1 second. Sure, what time are you looking for around?
At 12 p.m.
We do not have a 12 p.m. available. The closest we have to that is a 1:15.
Do you have anything between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m.?
Depending on what service she would like. What service is she looking for?
Just a woman's haircut for now.
Okay, we have a 10 o'clock.
10 a.m. is fine.
Okay, what's her first name?
The first name is Lisa.
Okay, perfect. So I will see Lisa at 10 o'clock on May 3rd.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Great. Have a great day. Bye.
It's called Google Duplex. This AI brings together key technologies such as natural language understanding, deep learning, and text-to-speech. Google has been working on this for many years and still developing. Once this technology is up and running, it will save tons of your time and generate a lot of value for businesses.
Wow, so hopefully that's got you thinking, got your brain churning over about the different uses of artificial intelligence, but also perhaps some concerns, perhaps some worries about how it could really change the way we work, how as churches and as followers of Jesus, how our lives could be changed by artificial intelligence, and if we lean on it, perhaps too much in our everyday lives. Well, we're now going to go to a series of interviews by practitioners from lots of different fields who have an interest from different areas in artificial intelligence. And the first guest is with Dave Newton. Now, he really sets out really well here about the use of AI. So here is Dave for our very first interview.
My name's Dave Newton. I'm Director of Training for Elim Pentecostal Churches and the Principal at Regents Theological College. When we think about AI, people start to think it's a very recent thing. The reality is AI has been being developed since about the 1950s. And there's some really familiar tools that make it quite helpful that we probably use on a day-to-day basis, like Siri and Alexa and facial recognition on our phones. But I guess since 2019 and in recent years, it's accelerated. So as we've started to think or find tools like ChatGPT, or we've talked about driverless cars, it's kind of come to the forefront, and we've started to think, ooh, what are some of the implications of this? Working in an academic institution, one of the things that we've been thinking about is what happens if students start using ChatGPT to write their essays or assignments, and what if we actually stop thinking for ourselves and allow the computer to do it for us? In the education space, I think how we learn has changed over time. So if you go back to the kind of when I was in school, we were rote taught. You had to learn facts and information. Well, now that's kind of pretty pointless because we can find that on Google, we can find that in other spaces. So I want to suggest the big change for us is from creation to curation. It's not about how we learn or remember facts. It's how we sort through all of that information to find out what's true, what's relevant, what's accurate, what's helpful for the conversations that we're having.
It's interesting you say about, students writing essays via ChatGPT. In fact, I heard recently about a preacher, not in the UK, but somewhere else. They wrote a whole sermon on ChatGPT and they presented it on ChatGPT, and it's very interesting. I mean, we know that preachers, pastors are busy. Are we going to see, is it right to see, sermons, other content being written and presented? Is that the inspired word of God? And this is all encompassed, really. Should we be worried? Should we be fearful about the use of AI?
We're clearly commanded in Scripture not to be people who worry. So Philippians 4:6. Don't worry about anything. Jesus himself says, therefore I tell you, don't worry about your life. However, Paul writes to the Ephesians and he says, be careful how you live, not as unwise, but as wise. So I guess there's a slight difference between being anxious and worrying about things that we do or we don't understand and applying wisdom and common sense to things. So let me give you a few examples. really that what is behind artificial intelligence is this concept of big data. How do we get as much information and sort through it as quickly as we can in order to get things out there? And the reality is we are giving data away all of the time. Our shopping habits, whether it be our local supermarket or Amazon spending, we're driving down the road and ANPR cameras are spotting where we're going. Our phone tracking data, location data, web cookies, Facebook posts, we're giving data away all of the time. So I think when it comes to this idea of worrying or being aware or being wise, we need to recognize that as we give this data away about ourselves, it almost calls us to even greater levels of holy living and living the way that God might intend us to do. Another area that we could be worried about is this reinforcing of popular opinions. We've heard the concept of echo chambers. And the idea is that popular things often get traction, but aren't necessarily the right thing in the right moments. And my nervousness around some of this big data development is we get told the things that we want to hear rather than the things that are important or challenging or essential for everyday living. Let me give you one more example of one area we might need to be worried when it comes to artificial intelligence, and that is the area of hallucination. So as computers and as big data start to create more and more information, they start to give us things that aren't necessarily factually true, but have been hallucinated or imagined by the computer as if it is true. So facts and dates and things that aren't reality start to be presented as though they are reality. So one of the questions we need to be asking is, can we trust the information and the data that we're receiving? Reminds me a little bit of the account when doubting Thomas meets Jesus after he's risen from the dead. And he says, just because I've heard it or just because you've seen it, I'm not going to trust it until I can touch him with my own hands. And we often kind of say doubting Thomas is got that name, doubting Thomas. But I wonder if we need to find new ways of being able to trust information that we see, because what we see with our eyes and what we hear with our ears might not always be factually true. Is artificial intelligence going to lead to the extinction of the world? You know, that's kind of an alarmist headline if you've ever seen one from the BBC. Let me offer some thoughts on that, Jason. The first one is this: the speed of learning is exponential. So if I'm in a classroom and I'm teaching 20 students, every individual student learns at their own pace. However, in this kind of computerized world, what one thing learns, one computer learns, the whole class learns at the same speed. So imagine if you've got 500 computers all learning at the same time, and as soon as one learns it, all of them learn it. The speed of learning is huge. And so I think the concern is, are we able to keep up with the computers as they're learning quicker and quicker and quicker? And so we get to this question of engineering versus regulation. So just because someone can and a scientist is able to develop something, does it mean they should? And what regulation should we put around things in terms of the application for this big data? So is the big data wrong in itself? Possibly not. But how it's used, we need to be very aware of. And the concern is the regulation moving as quick as the learning? And the answer is no. And who is regulating and how's it being regulated? So what could it be used for in terms of weapons and warfare? What could it be used for in terms of spying and espionage? What could it be used for in awesome? But I think that would apply to anything. We can always use a tool for something positive or something negative. You know, is a hammer wrong? Not if I'm hammering a nail, but if I choose to do something, you know, like knock down someone's house and I haven't got permission, then maybe it could be seen as. So it's how that tool is used. I also think the other danger I'll offer as a thought, Jason, is how it's used in conjunction with humans. So, for instance, if big data is used to kind of sift through hundreds and hundreds of faces and images in order to recognize something, then that could be good. But if generalizations are being made from that and humanity is not involved in some of that decision making, then it could be negative. So I think we just need to think through the uses and how it's used over time. We were created by God as humans to work. I think one of the big drives behind robotics and artificial intelligence is almost to remove work or increase comfort in humanity. So this idea that if I can relax and do the things I want to do, my life will be better. And so in a sense, we're moving against God's original plan for our lives, which was to be humans who were created to work. 6 days of work, 1 day of rest. And it's almost like the fall is kind of saying, no, I want 6 days of rest. And if I need to work 1 day, that's fine, as long as I've got the money and the finances to do it. So the whole notion of kind of having income that kind of works for itself and I don't have to work for it is kind of a common thought. So I think we need to be careful with our thirst for comfort or our desire for rest at the expense of a proper understanding of what it means to be made as people who are created to work. And so if the robot's going to do the work for us, then yeah, potentially it will take jobs, but also it might take sense of value and it might take our sense of purpose. And it might mean that mental health starts to increase, the challenges around that, because I haven't got a way of outworking the way that I've been created in the first place. So I think there are some deep issues that need to be considered, Jason, but equally, I wouldn't go to the alarmist, extremist, the world is going to end. These are tools that we can use as humans and can really benefit from as the world changes and develops over time.
Do you use AI?
Yeah, let me give you some real practical examples. One of the things I do a lot is talking and speaking and teaching. And so in terms of copyright law, finding images to illustrate the talks I'm doing can be very difficult because somebody else has taken that image and where do I get permission? Whereas ChatGPT can enable us or other tools to create art and images and even biblical images based on words and ideas that we can create and use that don't have copyright license associated with them. So a very simple way. Another thing, Jason, might be I might be able to write something quite helpfully or factually, but I want to put some emotion or feeling into that. So I might drop that into ChatGPT and say, can you rewrite what I've written and give it a little bit more emotion and feeling or passion? And it can be a tool to help me or to check some of my work. So I'm certainly not adverse to using it. In fact, I've written a recent article for a magazine on artificial intelligence, and I actually got AI to write the first half of it. And halfway through the article, I revealed that the first bit had been written by the robot and the second half had been written by myself, just as a little bit of a kind of a surprise to people that the complexity of some of what can be done now by robots is quite incredible.
I love that. I think that's amazing. In fact, I know a kids worker who was using ChatGPT to come up with some kids work ideas. So, looking for an illustration to do that. How would you do it in a kids work scenario? And it's coming up with some really great ideas. I know someone who was looking to write a song about a certain subject and put it in ChatGPT, and it was interesting the words that came back. They went on another action. And she said, "Can you put some chords to that music, to those song lyrics?" They tried out the chords. Wasn't so good, the music. I don't know if ChatGPT had quite the musical talent, really. But as we think about kids work, you gave lots of examples there. Kids work and worship team and everything. There's going to be some interesting news, isn't it? But where does God sit in front of that? Well, sit in the center of that, because are we going to sing a song on a Sunday that is written by a robot? And not only is that okay, but does God breathe his life into those lyrics?
I think interesting questions you're asking, Jason, and they're not dissimilar to some of the questions that were being asked during the COVID pandemic. Can the Holy Spirit really meet us over Zoom? Is the presence of God really there if we're all in our separate rooms? And if we think about it, of course, the answer is yes. The Holy Spirit lives within us. The Holy Spirit is everywhere. So if someone else or something else has written something that I can then use as a means of me engaging in worship or me drawing closer to God, then absolutely. Now, would I be saying that the robot's work is a divine work? Possibly not. But what I would be saying is I can use what has been created as a means of worship. So a piece of art that's been created by a robot might draw me closer to God. You know, a piece of a video that I watch might kind of challenge me on some things that's been developed by a robot. So let's not go so far, but let's be aware that actually God is at work in us, and therefore his spirit is at work in us, and let's not limit what God can do by our imagination as we kind of start to consider this. And let's not ignore, Jason, the evangelistic potential that can come from this as well, in terms of reaching out and reaching others, and connectedness that comes from this artificial world. One more thing I'll just throw in. So I talked about the theology of work, but what about the theology of sin or humanity? So for instance, when it comes to humans making mistakes, we tend to have a level of tolerance. If a robot gets something wrong, is my tolerance or willingness to forgive that machine as high as it is to a human? So for instance, when I drive my car, I make mistakes all the time. I forget to indicate, I get in the wrong lane, all of those things. But if it's a driverless car, do I have the same tolerance for it to make a mistake? And I think that's going to be an interesting thing for us as humanity as we start to explore artificial intelligence. And what's our toleration for, I use the term sin, and not that I'm believing that the robot's being sinful, but making a mistake. And the argument by the developers are robots do make mistakes, but they make a lot less mistakes than humans. And so what's our toleration for those mistakes? It's just an interesting thought.
Thanks very much, Dave. That was really, really helpful. Well, next up, we have an interview with a digital theologian who unpacks really, really well some ways we need to be very cautious about the use of AI and how it simply cannot replace the human touch, the way we go about our lives, the way we go about church. So watch this interview, be inspired, and let's check out this together.
Hi, I'm Dr. Calida Chu, now based in University of Nottingham at the Theology and Religious Study Department. I teach religion and media and ethics, and also religion in Britain now in this institution.
How is artificial intelligence useful? How is it useful for us as Christians? Perhaps you can give us some thoughts.
I guess when we are talking about AI, we tend to think it's more like super intellectual beings that are more clever than us. But I guess if we are thinking one step backward, we're thinking about computers or like something that help our daily learning in our life. I guess we could approach in that way and see, let's say, for example, AI, ChatGPT, they tell you to create information pretty quickly. I guess sometimes it's similar to Google, like you click some keywords and you search something and see what it answers. And sometimes it can be correct and sometimes it may be not, but as a way it helps us to get things quicker. I was looking at people that doing some design stuff the other day, like if you click a button, let's say draw Calida Chu in Disney format, then you can just click a button and do it quickly. Then they save your energy. I guess in that way it really helps you to develop and that kind of technique that save time, must save a lot of time. So yeah.
Sounds so useful, and I've had some experiments on ChatGPT, and it's been real fascinating to explore the functions on there. And it's been interesting because people have posed to me a question like, could a pastor write a sermon using ChatGPT and artificial intelligence? And I guess there are two prongs of that, really. I guess, how would that be possible? But also, is that right? Is it right that they should go to artificial intelligence? We're all learning in this subject. But what would your thoughts be on that, really? Of pastors and churches leaning on artificial intelligence to inform discipleship, for example?
Yeah, I guess that's the question. Maybe back to when we are talking about the concept. If you could do all the things you do, like Paul said in the Pauline letters, but would you really do it? For example, I'm sure like ChatGPT could help you to write a sermon, but what's the ethical implication on that? So what you want to get out of that? Maybe they ChatGPT could give you a summary or some sort of like, let's say oh, maybe you have not thought of such ideas, that they could give you some insight. But I would be doubtful that you really use that for sermon. But I won't say 100% no, because sometimes even you read some article, you feel maybe after reading that you feel it's nonsense, you will still read that. But I guess in some way that that may charge you out for that, especially I guess for lay persons who serve frequently, or even for pastor. What do you expect from a sermon? What do you want the sermon to be like? I guess it's some sort of about agency itself, and also the authority that the pastor will itself give have the training, and so he or she may interpret the scripture in certain way to nurture the community. I think there's some sort of about the relationship dynamics and ethical dynamics that is currently not present in AI. Maybe in the future, or like let's say 10 or 20 years, that it may be improved. The AI just know who you are, what kind of things that you want to hear. But I guess at this stage it's still too early, and I guess it's because the AI don't know you as a person, and also in the fact that I guess that it's still an early stage that they get correct information, because sometimes ChatGPT, they need to learn from human to improve.
Is it right that we could be singing worship songs that artificial intelligence has written? and it's interesting, where is God in that?
I was actually, my first degree is music. I was major in piano performance.
Wow.
So I do many different degrees. Yeah, too many degrees.
Very talented.
But I think one of the things that I feel treasure, that why I want to sing certain kind of song, is about the creativity that there may be the composer have certain kind of experience, or he or she has gone through some of the things that he or she is inspired by the scripture to write certain kind of songs. So I wouldn't say AI could not inspire us or enrich our spiritual journey, but I guess it's also come back to the relationship point, that because we feel that kind of person may have gone through some experience that are more related to us. But I guess at this point, you won't say AI have certain kind of experience to help you lead to God, because I seriously, I kind of think the stage of the current AI in terms of producing information is kind of like Wikipedia. So a lot of people putting different kind of information to help them to improve, but not in a way that is mature enough that you could just Google it, click a button on Wikipedia, and you trust all the information. I guess that's still a long way to go. I won't like really 100% reject people to sing an AI song, but I just feel, why don't you just sing something human? It's just my fault. I guess because it's not mature enough, but maybe in the future, I think it's okay.
What I see from the government, they're setting up AI kind of ethical panels, and what they're saying is that right now is a good time for us to evaluate AI, to set boundaries, even on like deep fake, really, the artificial pictures that can be created. Should there be like perhaps warning captions or something to say, hey, this is not the original picture?
I think the government should set some kind of policy, but I also think the church should start to think about it. You don't have to write very strict rules like the 10 Commandments, but at least
10 Commandments of AI.
Guidance to tell people like what you think is right or wrong. You don't have to, of course. I don't think all the pastors will use ChatGPT at all, but in a way, you have to just say, So at least you know what the church approach is like that, or even you don't use it. There's a certain argument that why you're not using it. I guess I think this is start. I don't think it have to be very strict rules, because AI just develops so quickly in a way that I guess it will be keep evolving in a way that maybe the church need new guidance in 1 or 2 years as well.
Such an inspiring interview. Thank you ever so much. Hey, next we've got an interview with someone who trains and works with churches in the use of the digital space. And this is super, super practical. So make sure you've got your notepad, your pen, and included in this interview are 5 ways about how you as churches, as pastors, as volunteers can use AI in a really, really, really practical way, amongst a whole bunch of other things that he shares about as well. So let's check out this together.
Hi, so my name's Peter Murden. I'm one of the co-founders of Digital Church Toolkit, which is a training platform for churches in digital communications. Every church I've ever spoken to, whatever their tradition, whatever their background, whatever kind of resource they have or their size, the reality is they're limited in time and in money and people. And I think that some of the AI tools around provide us with a way for free to speed up tasks. And so, for example, the other week I had to write a marketing report. Normally, kind of a 5 to 7 page marketing report would take me 3 to 5 days. I had the strategy in note form, and so I used an AI tool to help me write that marketing report. And instead of taking me 2 to 3 days, it took me 2 to 3 hours. Now, of course, I had to put in the prompts into the tool. I then had to edit it and make it all sound good and change a few things in it. But it's sped up my task from 2 to 3 days to 2 to 3 hours. And I think that's just one example of where, for churches, for those of you watching or listening, you are going to be poor in time or poor in resource, whether that's time or money or people. And I think that AI tools provide us an opportunity to speed that process up for us so that we can focus on the stuff that really matters, which is ultimately reaching people and discipling them. I'm 30 years old. I've been using an AI tool my entire life, and that's called spell check. So everyone watching this has been using an AI tool probably for the past 30 years. If you've ever used spell check, if you've ever used predictive text on your phone, which I assume almost everyone watching this probably has, means that you have used an AI tool, right? So let's not, as much as there's a lot of noise and a lot of hype, and the technology has advanced quite a lot in the past kind of 6 months, let alone the past couple of years, I think it's kind of helpful for us just to know that we've all been using them for a long time. And so, spell check is effectively what AI tools are effectively a steroid version of the little paperclip we used to have in Word back in the day. And so there's lots of tools out there. The one that I've played with most is ChatGPT, partly because it's free. And so there are a few others. And if any of you are playing with Canva at the moment, you probably by mistake used an AI tool. When you're in Canva and you turn a square graphic into a landscape graphic for your blog or something like that, you're using an AI tool there. I think I've got 5 what I think are practical, particularly church comms related examples of how I would be using ChatGPT. Now, I obviously don't work in church comms. I run a company that trains people in church comms. And so I have done all these things in my own context, but I'm going to kind of contextualize them in church. So the first thing is if you're working in church comms in any way, shape, or form, you're having to write a huge amount of what I would call copy, e.g. text, emails, captions for social media, descriptions on YouTube, replying to comments on Facebook. And for those of you in big churches who are running like large live streams, you're having to respond to all those comments. And that's a lot of writing of copy, and that takes time, right? Even someone that writes pretty quickly, it takes time. And so you can put into a tool like ChatGPT, which is totally free. You can put into that a prompt which says something like, write me an event description for the Church Alpha course. And it will give you a description for the Church Alpha course. And you can use that as your basis for your description for that Alpha course. You might want to change it, you might have to edit it, but you can use that as a basis. The other thing you can do is you can say, write me write me a description for the church alpha course using, and then put your church website in or your church Instagram account as a guide, and it will write you a description in similar language to use on your Instagram account and or your website. And that's a pretty good way of writing. And you're gonna have to edit that. You're gonna have to change some of that. I did it recently, and yes, I had to edit some of it. So I was doing some training with someone, and I literally screen shared my screen and did this, and I used the example of a prayer meeting, and it kept talking about spiritual connection rather than like connection to God. And so it just used a little different language than I would tend to use. And so we did actually end up editing that. But it's a great way. It's much easier to edit a piece of text than to create a piece of text from scratch. So that's number one. You can use it for writing copy. The second thing is, some of you watching might, when you're doing strategy development for your church digital presence, so you might be launching a new podcast and trying to work out how the launch of that podcast can fit into your wider digital comms presence, you can put in something into ChatGPT like, how can my church podcast help with the overall digital strategy for my church? And it will pull you out probably 10 ideas on how that can happen. And that's a great way of using it as a bit of a second brain. The third way is that it can be idea generating. So, you have got a family fun day possibly coming up in the summer, or those of you that are really organized might have already started to plan Christmas. And so you can say, hey, we have an upcoming family fun day. Give me 5 ways we could promote that in our local community. And it will give you 5 ways you can promote that in your local community. Now, that's a good starting place for the way you're going to promote it. It might, it's a great starting place. 2 of them might be great, but at least then you got 2 extra ideas than you had previously. So that's the third way. You can use it for idea generation. You can do that in all kinds of different contexts, not just when it comes to digital comms. Here's the fourth way, planning a meeting. For particularly those of you on staff, you're going to be in lots of different kinds of meetings, right? Planning meeting for church comms, reviewing the church website, reviewing the church digital strategy, planning the Christmas program. That some of you will have those meetings come up in the next couple of months. And we all know that a meeting with an agenda is much more effective than a meeting without an agenda. And so you can ask ChatGPT to give you give me an agenda for an upcoming meeting reviewing the church digital presence, and it will pull you out an agenda. Here's my fifth and final way. For those of us in life, but particularly those of us in ministry, we're going to get some emails and text messages which require extra grace in our responding to, right? You get an email that's a little bit difficult and you're not quite sure how to reply. You might get a text message similarly, and you can ask ChatGPT to do that for you. So you can say, hey, reply to this text message in a way that is empathetic yet pushes back, and it will then give you a reply back to an email or to a text message. Again, you might edit that, you might change that, but at least starting place is much easier. So it can help you reply to a tricky text message or email.
Super helpful there. Thank you so much, Peter. Next up, we have an interview with Richard Hasnip. Richard, as he will share, is a playwright. He lectures in performing arts at our Regents Theological College, and he recently wrote a play all about artificial intelligence. And of course, we had to talk to him about it, hear about what the play was about, how it's impacted him, perhaps some learning lessons about how we can use AI from the whole process of writing that play. So here's Richard, who will share more about the play and about his thoughts and opinions about artificial intelligence. So here we go, let's watch this now.
Yeah, my name is Rich Hasnip, and I teach at Regents Theological College, and specifically I do the performing arts stuff there on the whole. But I also write plays and write for various different theatre companies.
And talking of writing, I hear that you wrote a play, involved in a play about artificial intelligence, which we're looking at today. Tell us about the context of it, how it was written, and what was it about? Yeah,
sure. So this was a thing that was commissioned before lockdown, and it was Riding Lights Theatre Company that were doing it, and they'd received some funding by the Templeton Foundation, and they had this team of scientists who worked with me, kind of advised me really on what they felt the key issues were regarding artificial intelligence. And then my job was to take those discussions and turn that somehow into a play. And so this was all going on before lockdown. It was meant to happen before lockdown, but events overtook us. So then we were doing various Zoom meetings and things, but the whole play was stalled until this year when it was done just after Christmas. It was called The Uneasy Sleeps of Max Maxwell. And I guess what I tried to do really was I had this, my central character was a sort of computer programmer who'd created a kind of AI who he called Ella. And the first kind of use of this AI was going to be a driverless car. So that's what it was. And we were heading towards the launch of this car. And so his uneasy sleeps were partly that we were heading towards this important date for him. But at the same time, he was testing out the operating system. And one of the ways that he was testing it was that his mother-in-law was in a care home, and they were getting robot carers that were using the same AI system. And so her mum was kind of a guinea pig, his mum, his wife's mum, which when she discovered it, his wife was not thrilled about that. So I suppose what we tried to do then was because he wasn't sleeping well, so he was sort of going in and out of dreams. We were able to play with kind of quite extreme versions of what might happen, and then pull it back to something a bit closer to a day-to-day reality. But it gave us quite a lot of flexibility for how we tackled the various.
It must have been quite an eye-opener for you, and indeed, the cast and all those involved. Artificial intelligence is hitting the news right now, big time. It's got a lot of people thinking. Based on your journey to writing the play, what would you say to people right now who are also excited but also concerned, and somewhere in the middle? What would you say to these people?
I mean, I'm no expert on AI. I should say that. I've just written this play, and I've worked with people who are experts. What I would say is the scientists I worked with were themselves torn on it. So the initial group I met with were very keen not to have a kind of dystopian, the robots are taking over kind of play, which was, sure enough, that was my first instinct to write that play, because I know how to write that. But so they wanted to have some positives in there. So, for example, the robot carer, it raises some moral questions, but it was incredibly effective. So the mum, who is sort of was suffering from some form of dementia, she really liked her robot carer, but that was very difficult for her daughter, who ended up sort of being jealous of it in some ways. So and then as the play goes on, there's this particular kind of crunch moment where the mum unfortunately has a sort of health crisis, and although the robot is very good at knowing what to do, calling the ambulance and so on, it's the daughter that the mum reaches out for. And the daughter kind of takes her hand and starts praying for her and so on. So I hope in that kind of moment we were able to show a little bit of what AI can do, and perhaps where its limits are.
When you said about a carer could be replaced by AI, I can see that happening, to be honest. But I equally know there are people roles. You just got to think of supermarkets, and the self-checkout. The amount of checkout operators who have been replaced by that operating system and robots, etc. It's going to be a different world, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like it or not, we do depend on tech. Even if you're not, perhaps fond of tech necessarily, it's going to happen. But it's out there. I guess what is your reaction? Because it might be in you've written this play. It might be in 10 years' time. A play might look quite different. There might be an updated play, from what it was, and in fact, what you've written might be more of a reality. Really, I guess how do you feel about that? Can you see that happening?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting. There was a recent writers' strike in Hollywood, and one of their conditions was that that the studios would commit not to using AI to generate script ideas at any point. And I don't think there's any way the studios are going to commit to that, because, of course, you can use AI to generate ideas. And to come up with plots for movies, even if you want a human to eventually write the difficult bits. I think that is bound to happen. And I think there's whole jobs. I mean, I think you're right. There are whole careers that probably could be done better by computers, and that's going to be a problem for our education system, which prepares people for particular jobs. It's going to be so we're going to have to. You're right. We can't ignore it, but it's not obvious at the moment to see how to respond unless we just all become computer programmers, which I'm not really equipped to do. So.
Did you find the process of the play hard? Because it's if it's going to happen or not, it's imagining a future which is very different to ours, and there's going to be consequences on people's lives, people's jobs, etc. Was that quite challenging? Because if that does happen, and we might see elements of happening. We said about supermarkets. That must have been quite an interesting process to go through in writing that.
Yeah, it is, and I think, I mean, the carers was a good sort of example, because it's one where I think you can genuinely see both sides of it. The mum character in the play feels immensely guilty because she's a Christian, she's a vicar actually, and she says, honor your father and mother. I should be caring for mum, and the truth is she has been going in it, but nevertheless there are things that a robot carer that's there all the time can do that she can't do, and so by objecting to it, there was a sense in which what she's objecting to is she doesn't want to be left, she doesn't like being replaced, or she doesn't, so it feels like a selfish thing. On the other hand, I think we all feel a bit uncomfortable with the idea of outsourcing care, and that, because actually I can imagine, I've never worked in a care home or anything like that, but I can imagine it's a difficult job. I can imagine it might even be hard to find people to do that job. I'm not sure, but nevertheless, you feel like it's a job that humans ought to do, and that our work. So I find that very complicated, and so that I found really difficult, knowing quite what the right answer is to that, and I still don't really know. So I suppose, which is why I mentioned the Amish. I suppose I feel like we need kind of wise checks and balances. Really, we need to sort of not just sort of shut it down, to try bits out, but then keep asking, is this making us better? I think the moral question to me is really important. Does it make me a better person in the end? I'm not all that interested in speeding up processes. I think on the whole that's not led to a higher quality of life. It's not that we're expected to do less. We just have to do more faster normally. So I'm not especially interested in the convenience aspect of things. I'm interested in, does it make us more human, closer to God, those kinds of things. And I think it's not impossible that AI could help in some of those ways, but we have to be cautious and careful, I think. Yeah.
Super interesting. Thank you so much, Rich. So interesting to hear about the play and what you learned about artificial intelligence in the process. Hey, next we've got our very final interview. Phil Worthington takes a broad view of artificial intelligence and he shares some really practical examples alongside some broad picture, big thinking about AI and about how we can apply it to our life. So let's watch this together.
Okay, my name is Phil Worthington. I am one of the PAs to Stuart Blount, Director of Ministry at Elim. I mean, AI for me is like anything else. It's great when it's a tool that you're using positively for ministry, and it can also be a real problem. Personally, I've used it as a tool for generating images for posters and so on. So I used an image creator called Stable Diffusion. I've used some of that and Midjourney as well, and both of those will let you generate images for whatever. The nice thing about that is essentially they present themselves in ways being royalty free. Now there are some arguments from people saying, well, are they really royalty free? Do you have sources that they're drawing in that actually should be copyrighted? But at the moment they appear to be royalty free images, and you can make anything you can think of, really.
Can you realistically see sermons being created on AI? Should we be doing that? Should we not? What's your thoughts?
I don't think it's not really a question of can I realistically see sermons being created in AI. I think sermons are already being created in AI. I know of at least one pastor who's told me of friends that he knows who have used ChatGPT to create sermons for them. There was a whole Lutheran conference in Germany just a couple of weeks ago, where actually they did the whole conference based on ChatGPT, and it generated all the wording and actually the worship as well, I believe. You have to have a look at that. So people are already doing this. This is not conjecture. It's not a fictional idea. People are already using AI to generate sermons. Now, as to where I stand on that, I know that you and I have had a little bit of a chat about this before, and my issue really is that I believe a sermon should be something that is inspired. So if it's inspired in a literal sense, the Spirit has given you wording to give to other people, and the congregation that hears it should be inspired as well. That doesn't mean you don't draw in from other sources. You can bring in quotes and all sorts of things, of course. But I do think that what you're aiming for is to ask, what is God trying to tell these people? Because that's how a sermon should work, as far as I'm concerned. And I don't think you can do that just by taking a script from anywhere else. But can the computer be inspired? Well, that's a big question, isn't it? Can the Holy Spirit speak to or through a computer? I'd say no. I think the difference with AI is what you're talking about is almost removing the human component entirely if you're not careful, and saying, no, we will take the original text comes from a computer. Whereas if we've had, thousands of years where we've used technologies of different kinds, whether it be stone tablet, papyrus, books, TV, Zoom, doesn't really matter. We've used technologies to convey a human-inspired message to other inspired humans. But actually, when we're talking about a computer message to humans, that's a different thing entirely in my book.
The role of a pastor in a church involves, a lot of different, responsibilities. Pastoral care, preaching, designing marketing material for an alpha course, running an alpha course, everything.
Absolutely, yeah.
Do you think a pastor can outsource some of their responsibility to a robot?
There's a church in Germany, I believe, that actually did this a few years ago. So they set up a robot priest. I think it was a Catholic church, although I'd have to double check the sources on that. And they set a robot priest that could do blessings and, just give out little bits of advice, I think, as well. I think it really depends on what you're expecting from a pastor. If what you're expecting is to simply be given bits of knowledge, you can get bits of knowledge from Google. You don't need a human for that. If you just want to research something, if you want to be given, what is the answer to this question, then yes, you can potentially find that. I think if what you're wanting is actually say, what does God think about this? I don't think any AI or robot will ever have the answer to that. And in terms of being able to pray for people, again, how does prayer work? If we just assume that prayer is words that are spoken, well, okay, yes, a robot can do that, but I think that very much diminishes prayer. In my understanding of prayer and the way I've experienced prayer is a direct communication with God. And actually you are inspired by God to pray words that then go back to God. It's almost a circular loop. And again, I don't think a computer has the capacity to do that, because a computer doesn't have a spirit to be inspired. We are a unique creation of God. And there's no way that a computer has that same standing. The computer will not have a spirit, not have a soul, not have the connection to God that we would have.
What other? There's ChatGPT. What other kind of tools out there that churches could use, Christians could use? Just some real practical ideas or things that kind of got you thinking, whirring in your brain of how AI can be used for churches.
Well, ChatGPT at the moment is a little bit of a novelty because you have to go and specifically look for it. But what is happening at the moment, the biggest introduction probably to the general public will be Microsoft Copilot, which is going to be integrated into Windows and into all the Office suite by the end of the year. It's already available for large businesses, and they're working to integrate that fully into Windows and so on. That will mean that you can then go into Word, for example, and you can ask Word to create a document for you. Think of it a bit like a sort of powered up version of, do you remember the paperclip, Microsoft Clippy? That said, I see you're writing an email. Do you want, and it would try to fill it out for you. What we have as an issue is really, where does human creativity and inspiration come within that? So I'm sorry to always sound cautionary within that. I think there's a lot of good uses for AI. I was just reading today, actually, about AI that's not an AI that we would use as a church, but AI that just simply looks at rubbish as it's being sorted to try and figure out what should be recycled in that, and to actually spot things in there. There are many uses for AI, AI in healthcare, AI in writing, AI in many different forms. It's not just in one little bit this is going to touch. This is a global phenomenon. I think the issue almost is we're kind of at a bit of a sort of gold rush stage where everybody is eager to get AI into everything. You're going to see AI mentioned in every single context, and whether or not it's appropriate for that context is a question that I think we need to be thinking about.
So we go 5 different interviews, 5 different perspectives on AI, which hopefully has got you thinking, has inspired you, has encouraged you. But also, if you're really worried about AI, hopefully you've got a bit of an understanding really about kind of which side of the fence you're on, or perhaps you're just even more curious to learn more. Well, that's a good posture to be in as well. Hey, we're in a rapidly changing time with tech. So let's seek God in all we do, gain his wisdom in all we do. Whether AI is being used to write letters in our style of handwriting.
The AI copies your handwriting style and can be used for homework. Best of all, the researchers are giving the design away for free so you can make your own. Will you let AI do your homework?
Whether AI is being used for image manipulation and image creation. And we see AI doing more and more things in our life, which simply blows our mind at the use of this incredible technology. We hope this session has inspired and got you thinking. And don't forget, this is part 1 of 2 sessions on AI. The second part includes an interview with Malcolm Duncan, a theologian, about God and technology and the use of AI. But we hope you've enjoyed today's session on artificial intelligence. Don't forget to check out the other sessions in the Elim digital workshops. Thank you for being with us today, and we hope you've enjoyed all the interviews and enjoyed all the content in this session. Bye-bye for now.